So for the next speaker, I would like to introduce Dr. Atum Patel. He has already been introduced before to give us the topic of how to interpret serum beta-D-glucan. Dr. Patel.
So I'm going to speak on another biomarker that is beta-D-glucan. So the question comes like why we are looking at fungal biomarkers when we can readily look at the biological samples, culture it, do molecular diagnostic sequencing, identify the species and do a drug susceptibility testing. The answer to this question is very simple. That we know that almost all the invasive fungal infection, whatever, like whether it is a cryptococcal infection or aspergillus or mucormycosis, the mortality rate is roughly 50%. So half of the patient diagnosed with any invasive fungal infection will die. So if we can make an early diagnosis by use of these fungal biomarkers, probably we may initiate early effective antifungal therapy, and this could lead to probably improvement in the survival of a patient who has invasive fungal infection. So when we looked at the standard or the traditional culture-based methods to make a diagnosis, these are very slow and it is time-consuming with poor sensitivity. So we know that half of the culture in mucormycosis is sterile. When we looked at the readily available, the antibody-based test in any infections, they generally lack the specificity because of the cross-reactivities of antibodies against some different other antigens, right? So it lacks the specificity, and that is a very important limitations of antibody-based test that when we looked or when we apply into making a diagnosis in any disease condition. There is a good successful story about the using cryptococcal antigen that is widely used and widely available, and it has and increases the interest in identifying the fungal antigens. And we know the histoplasma antigen detection into the urine is a very important markers for patient who has progressive disseminated histoplasmosis in immunocompromised states. The galactoman been talked by Ben Hawk in previous talk. So again, it is a very useful antigen. But we have to remember that, I mean, whenever you are applying all this newer methodology in making a diagnosis, it should be combined with all the factors like clinical factors, radiological factors. The host factor is extremely important to interpret the positive or the negative values of these readings. And important is another important is beta D glucan that I am going to talk. The important facts about this use of the molecular diagnostic test in the IFI is that this EORTC MSC guidelines, they have now included beta-D-glucan as a meeting criteria for mycological evidence of infection. So this is one of the very important component of making or arriving diagnosis of invasive fungal infections by EORTC MSC criteria. Now, this beta-D-glucan is found in broad range of fungal pathogens. So most of the fungi, they contains this beta-D-glucan receptors, mainly Candida, all the Candida species, Pneumocystis jirovecii pneumonia. This is having abundant beta-D-glucan into the cell wall. Aspergillus also release the beta-D-glucan. Some of the mucormycosis species, like I told that Rhizopus erizus, they do secrete beta-D-glucan in a little amount, but not in a diagnostic range. The Cryptococcus do secrete beta-D-glucan. So there are now studies looking at the CSF beta-D-glucan in a patient with cryptococcal meningitis. But by and large, we can say that in cryptococcal infection, you will get a negative beta-D-glucan. The fusariosis and blastomyces dermatitis produces beta-D-glucan at a very minimal level, right? Now we have 4 different manufacturer and 4 different kits available for detecting beta-D-glucan. And 3 of these kits is from Japan and 1 is from USA. The oldest one is approved in 1995, and again, it's a Japanese manufacturer. The next one is 96. 2001 is another from Japan, and 2004 kit, the US kit got approval in 2004. They have some difference in the assay method, and the important difference in this different kit is their cutoff value. The Fungitech G, which is from Japan, has a cutoff value of 20 picogram per ml. The beta glucan test from Waco has 11. BG Star from Japan has 11, but the Fungitel, which is US FDA approved kit, has a cutoff of 60 to 80 picogram per ml. So this is important difference that we need to remember when we order a beta-glucan, and we need to find out which kit the lab is using. And when you look at turnaround time, almost all the kits has turnaround time of 30 minutes, except this beta-glucan test takes 90 minutes and Fungitel takes 40 minutes. Now, like serum galactomannan, beta-glucan does gives you a false positive. So positive beta-glucan does not always means that you are dealing with some fungal infection. The important factors which can give you a false positive beta-glucan includes this beta-lactam antibiotics, which can be amoxicillin clavulanic acid or any other semi-synthetic beta-lactams can give you a positive results. Whenever patient is receiving blood products, either it is a packed cells or the fresh frozen plasma or the platelets or albumin, intravenous globulin, all these products can give you a false positive beta-glucan. So whenever you have ordered a beta-glucan test and when results comes, you need to take into the account whether patient has received any albumin, globulin, or the blood products or the coagulation factor prior to sending this test, because this can lead to erroneously false positive results. The another factors which can give you a false positive beta-glucan would be when patient is receiving hemodialysis and certain filter contains cellulose in hemodialysis. So these are the patients where you can get very high serum beta-glucan in absence of fungal infections. Here it is because of the false positive beta-glucan because of this cellulose filter. So when the patient is having a surgical gauze inside after surgery, because there are few of the surgery where intentionally surgeon will keep a gauze inside to give a compressions to arrest ongoing oozing, right? And they generally remove after 2 to 3 days time, once the hemostasis is achieved. So when intentional gauze is kept inside the abdominal cavity, you may get a false positive beta-glucan because of these cotton exposures, because of the surgical gauze and cotton exposures. And certain bacterial bloodstream infections, including some of the gram-positive and few gram-negative bacterial infections, can give you a false positive beta-glucan test. Now, the most important advantage that I see with the use of beta-glucan is that it is performed from the very easily available biological specimen, right? It is from the blood. So if I'm dealing with some pulmonary infection, if I need to do a bronchoscopy and patient is having low platelets of, say, for example, 2000 and patient is having absolute neutropenia, then these are the very difficult situation where putting a bronchoscope, getting a biopsy or getting a samples from the lung would be difficult. But whatever the sickness the patient is having, whether patient is hypotensive, critically ill, ICU, ventilator, no factors will hamper the collections of this blood sample to get results from these fungal biomarkers, right? So if somebody is having meningitis, you need to do a CSF to get a sample from where the patient is, you are suspecting infection. So these are the most difficult sites to get repeated samples, but you can go for a repeated blood collections. If you want to monitor patients twice a week with beta-glucan, you can readily do even though patient is very sick. So serial beta-glucan is possible. You cannot do a serial bronchoscopic examination in most of the patients. The sensitivity and specificity of this beta-glucan test, regardless of the invasive organisms, can range from 38% to 100%. So it is not that highly sensitive test, just like serum galactomannan. And the specificity is also ranging from 45 to 99%, right? The positive predictive value of this beta-glucan again ranges from 30 to 89%, and negative predictive value is 73 to 97%, fairly good, right? So it is less sensitive compared to galactomannan. Now coming to the few important different clinical scenario where we are using beta-glucan to identify fungal infection, and the first setting would be hematological setting. And there are various studies that have looked for the serial beta-glucan antigenemia test at least twice a week, just like serum galactomannan. And what they found that the specificity of identifying invasive fungal infection, including aspergillosis, the specificity of getting a serial beta-glucan is 76 to 99% with very high negative predictive value. So this is one area where probably you will be able to pick up invasive fungal process in hemato-onco settings early by using beta-glucan test. But the issues with beta-glucan is, like I told you, that it has got a very low sensitivity, and the pool sensitivity is around just 50%, with positive and the negative predictive value of 83 to 94%, right? So sensitivity of beta-glucan is a matter of concern here. So what the recommendation or the author statement says that due to the consistently low sensitivity, despite a strong negative predictive value, a negative beta-glucan should not be used to exclude the possibility of IFI, right? Because it lacks the sensitivity. The sensitivity is just half, 50%. Now, serial beta-glucan in candidemia, because there are a few thoughts that when patient is being diagnosed with candidemia and patient is receiving therapy, you may expect that, or the clinicians may expect that the elevated beta-glucan after a successful candidemia therapy should go serially down. So let us see what has happened. So serial beta-glucan was performed in 203 patients with proven invasive candidiasis and receiving echinocandins, that is enidulafungin. And what they found that the correlation of negative slope, the decline in the beta-glucan level from a patient who has responded to your therapy has positive predictive value of 90%, and the positive slope following treatment failure, again, negative predictive value of 90%. So probably it showed, but when you looked at the patient who has achieved actual negative beta-glucan, who has successfully treated with enidulafungin, only 60% of successful treatment achieved negative beta-glucan. So there is no good correlation that the beta-glucan becomes negative after successful treatment in this study, which was published in 2012. And this is because of that lack of understanding of pharmacokinetics of beta-glucan. So once beta-glucan comes into the circulation, how it is being handled and how it is being eliminated from the circulation is not exactly known. So we do not know how beta-glucan will be eliminated from the circulation after eradications of fungal infection. That's the reason that we cannot use a serial BDG monitoring to monitor the success or the failure of candidemia treatment. So in this manuscript, the author says that presence or absence of beta-glucan should not be used to guide cessation of therapy as a test of cure, right? Because we do not know the pharmacokinetics, how the BDG is going to be eliminated from a patient. Now, another area where the beta-glucan is being extensively used, and that is pneumocystis jirovecii pneumonia. I told you that the beta-glucan is a major component of PJP surface, right? So in the patient who has pneumocystis jirovecii pneumonia, you can get a very high elevated beta-glucan level. And in this meta-analysis, where 11 studies been used in this meta-analysis, and they found that in laboratory confirmed PJP, the pooled sensitivity and specificity of beta-glucan in making a diagnosis is very good. It's very high, 95% and 86% respectively. And beta-glucan has a very high negative predictive value to rule out that patient is not having PJP infections. It's more than 95%. So I think this is one infection where if it is not, when patient is so much hypoxic and it is not possible to put a bronchoscope, I think we can use beta-glucan in making a diagnosis or ruling out a diagnosis of PJP. So levels of, and here also like the another important point is that the high beta glucan level does not mean that patient is having severe pneumocystis carinii, because PJP has a very low virulence. It is not that virulent pathogens to produces alveolar inflammations. It is a host response against pneumocystis jirovecii, which produces alveolar inflammations, alveolitis, and severe hypoxia, right? So very high BDG doesn't mean that the patient will have very severe disease. It just reflects that patient who can have very high burden of pneumocystis jirovecii organisms. But clinical severity is related to how the host is reacting to these infections at the alveolar level. So whenever you get a negative beta-glucan, and if you are suspecting PJP, it is very likely that you have ruled out pneumocystis jirovecii pneumonia with negative BDG value. So BDG in this infection plays a significant role in making a diagnosis. Now another scenario of invasive pulmonary aspergillosis. It is again useful in predicting the therapeutic outcomes in the patient who has invasive aspergillosis. And BDG level shows a constant rise before clinical and radiological evidence of invasive aspergillosis exists. So it comes early into the circulation before we have a clinical or the radiological evidence in terms of nodules and halo surrounding the nodules. So probably this is a very useful test when you are doing routinely as a screening method. The decrease and ultimately becomes negative when patient has responded to the antifungal therapy, and patient who are not responding, they do not show any decrease in the level of BDG in these different studies. So probably there is a fair linear correlations of BDG level in invasive aspergillosis and making a diagnosis and judging a response to the treatment. Now, another scenario, because here like what we have discussed is serum beta-glucan. So can we do beta-glucan from BAL? Can we do beta-glucan from CSF and other biological specimen? Researchers has also looked into the estimations of beta-glucan, and it was studied well into the invasive pulmonary aspergillosis and the patient whose BAL was positive for Candida. We know that Candida is not a pathogen in the BAL. And what they found that the accuracy of beta-glucan into the BAL sample is marginal. So probably it is not that helpful, just like serum galactomannan in making a diagnosis of invasive aspergillosis. And one should not interpret the VAL beta-glucan level alone to make a diagnosis or to rule out a diagnosis of invasive aspergillosis. The CSF beta-glucan has been studied with variety of infections, including Aspergillus ventriculitis, Candida meningitis, which is a part of hematogenous Candida meningoencephalitis, cryptococcal meningitis, coccidial meningitis, and the outbreak that United States has experienced before 5 or 6 years, that is for exersohilum meningitis. All these conditions can give you elevated beta-glucan into the CSF. So probably when you are suspecting CSF fungal infections with all these organisms, probably you can take a help of beta-glucan from CSF to arrive or to support your clinical diagnosis. Now, how do we interpret like positive and negative beta-glucan? Again, we have discussed that, I mean, it should be not taken alone that beta-glucan is positive or negative. There are other factors that you need to take into the account to interpret the results, and these are the host factor. So if your patient is having hematological malignancy, neutropenic, or patient is having HSCT, right? So host factor is very appropriate for invasive aspergillus prevalence. And if you have clinical findings that patient is febrile, patient on CT scan examination is showing nodules or halo or the air crescent sign, so now you have appropriate clinical conditions also, that your appropriate host is there, and the clinical scenario is also supporting some suspicious of fungal infection. So you have a very high index of clinical suspicion. So pre-test probability here in this case is very high for fungal infection. And if your BDG and galactomannan testing comes positive, then the invasive aspergillosis is highly probable, right? So this is how you have to interpret. You have to take clinical host factor as well as your lab results to make it into the account. But if your the BDG and galactomannan is negative in this scenario where your pre-test probability is very high that your host is appropriate, then IS suspicions remain very strong because negative results cannot rule out. There are other factors which may be leads to the negative results. And there are other fungi which also produces the same clinical syndrome in immunocompromised host, right? So we need to do other diagnostic modalities, take a help of other diagnostic modalities like biopsies, bronchoscopies, or the molecular testing, or the PCR for aspergillus, and to need to confirm in this scenario, right? So don't rule out or don't make the diagnosis by serum galactomannan or beta-glucan alone. Similarly, when you are dealing with solid organ transplant patients and patient is having non-specific pulmonary nodules, so you have a moderate suspicions of some fungal infections going on into the system. Again, you have to interpret very carefully positive and negative results, and you have to take into all the accounts. Similarly, the patient with low risk, but there are, the patients where you can get invasive fungal infections in this, the solid organ cancer patients, patient receiving corticosteroids, because corticosteroids can produce qualitative neutrophil dysfunctions, and which is probably responsible for invasive fungal infections apart from the immunosuppressions by other means. And all the autoimmune conditions where patient is receiving immunosuppressives, monoclonal antibodies, where the patient's risk becomes very high. So again, you need to interpret all these results carefully. So what is the proposed recommendations for use of these beta-glucan results? So the recommendation says that the testing should be used in conjunction with the other methods of diagnosis. So alone test probably is not useful. The confirm positive results with a second specimen. So if you get one specimen is positive and you have appropriate clinical patient, start your antifungal therapy and get a repeat sample to make sure that you are dealing with fungal infection. Twice weekly testing can be used to surveillance at risk patients like hematological malignancy, where patients having febrile neutropenia ongoing. So you need to do a serial monitoring. And you have to begin surveillance at the onset of neutropenia rather than when the symptoms arise, because this test is able to pick up the invasive process into the pulmonary system early before the patient has clinical and the radiological features. So you have to start surveillance before the patient develops actual neutropenia. When patient is having high lipid levels, high cholesterol, or patient is having, the sample is hemolyzed, or patient is having jaundice, so here you need to avoid running a fungital test or the beta-glucan test, because this may produces error into the results. So lipemic serum, hemolyzed, and the icteric, high bilirubin. And you have to minimize the manipulations of specimen to decrease the risk of contamination, because there are very high chance if the sample is not collected properly and there are trace of the cotton is there, and it is sufficient to produce contaminations and give you a false positive galactomannan results. Just to summarize this BDG in clinical practice, this test is likely of value only in selected patients populations like HSCT patients, that is neutropenic patients, in diagnosis of selected infections like pneumocystis jirovecii pneumonia. Multiple positive results are best at predicting the presence of invasive fungal infections rather than a single reading. There are many potential sources of false positive that we discussed, so we need to be very careful that single positive value is of limited value. The test has poor sensitivity, just only 50% sensitivity to make a diagnosis, so it is not a useful test for a screening except for neutropenia. A negative test cannot exclude the diagnosis of invasive fungal infections. We know the reason. And monitoring beta-glucan quantity levels in a patient being treated for invasive candida infection has little bit of value. Thank you very much for the patience listening.